I'm a 21-year-old guy, and I guess I'm writing this because I need to put the whole thing somewhere outside of my head. What happened this Thanksgiving has been sitting in my chest like a weight I can't shake, and I've replayed it so many times now that it feels like it happened both yesterday and a lifetime ago. I don't know if I'm looking for advice or validation, or if I'm just trying to document something that changed me, but here goes. Every Thanksgiving for as long as I can remember, my family has had this tradition. And by tradition, I don't mean something cute or funny or sentimental. I mean something that everyone just accepts even though the energy around it is heavy and strange. We set the table with an extra seat. And not just any seat. It's always placed at the far end of the table, closest to the window, like it's offering the best view. My grandma uses her nicest china for it. The gold-trimmed plate she keeps in a separate cabinet. The polished silverware she only handles with those white gloves that make her look like a museum archivist. Even the water glass is filled before anyone sits down. And no one sits in that chair. You don't touch it. You don't move it. You don't ask about it. If you joke about it, the adults shut it down instantly. Growing up, I didn't question it because kids don't know what's normal and what's not. You assume your family's rituals are just what everyone does, and when you see how tense everyone gets, you learn quickly not to poke the bear. But as I got older, the weirdness became more obvious. Friends would hear about it and ask if we lost someone. I'd shrug and say I didn't know. I genuinely didn't. My family wasn't open about anything deeper than weather and football. My mom, especially, shut down whenever anything emotional came up, like she trained herself to survive by not acknowledging anything painful. By the time I hit 18, I decided the empty chair thing was just one of those bizarre family quirks that I'd never get an explanation for. Something tied to a wound too deep to touch. Something that made the adults' eyes go flat and distant when I brought it up. So I stopped asking. I left for college. I moved out. I tried to shrug off the weirdness the way you do when you realize families are never as normal as you think. But then I turned 21 this year, and something in me shifted. Maybe it's the independence, maybe it's the realization that my parents aren't these untouchable, all-knowing beings, maybe I'm just tired of pretending everything is fine when I know damn well there's a thunderstorm under the surface. Whatever it is, this year I walked into the house and saw that chair set up again, with that plate gleaming under the chandelier, and I thought, no. Not again. Not this year. I deserve to know. It didn't help that the whole house already felt tense. That kind of buzzing, static electricity feeling like something was going to snap. My mom was in full hostess mode, but her smile didn't touch her eyes. My grandma moved slower than I remembered, and she kept rubbing her hands together like she was working up the courage to say something. My Uncle Mark arrived smelling like whiskey even though it wasn't even noon yet. Basically, it was the perfect storm for something to break. So I got home 2 days before Thanksgiving. My backpack was still on my shoulder when I saw the dining table fully set, even though dinner wasn't until Thursday. And there it was again, the chair, almost glowing with the attention put into it. Everything else still needed to be prepped or placed or wiped down, but that place setting looked like it had been ready for hours. I stared at it long enough that my grandma shuffled in behind me and said, "Don't start with that look." Not angry, not defensive, just tired. Like she'd been waiting for this day to come but hoping it never would. I didn't push right then. I told myself I'd wait for the right moment. But the right moment never comes in my family. There's only moments you take and moments that slip away forever. Thanksgiving morning. The house smelled like cinnamon and turkey, and the fireplace my mom only turns on during holidays to set the mood. My 2 little cousins were running around, pretending to be superheroes, and one of them, Ethan, climbed right onto the empty chair. Just plopped himself down like any normal kid would. He grabbed the fancy napkin and started folding it like an airplane, humming to himself. My mom reacted like he'd touched a live wire. "Ethan, not that chair," she shouted. And the panic in her voice was so sharp, so visceral, that everyone froze. My aunt turned around with eyes wide. My grandma gasped. Even Ethan's older brother stopped mid-sentence. The whole room went silent, and my mom practically yanked the napkin out of Ethan's hand like it offended her. That was the moment I knew with absolute certainty that something was deeply wrong, and that this tradition wasn't symbolic or sentimental. It was personal. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. The adults all looked at each other like they were waiting for someone else to speak. My mom's face was pale. My grandma put her hand on her chest like her heart had skipped a beat. I couldn't take it anymore. "Mom," I said later, when we were alone in the kitchen. "What is that chair for?" She didn't look at me. She kept stirring the gravy like her life depended on it. "Not today," she said. "When then?" I pressed. "I'm not a kid. You can tell me the truth." Her hand shook. She put the spoon down and closed her eyes. "It's not the right time. It's never the right time," I shot back. She walked out without answering. That should have been the end of it. I should have let it go. But something in me refused. Maybe it was the way her voice had cracked. Or the way my uncle kept glancing at the chair like it was haunting him. Or the way my grandma avoided my eyes every time she walked past me. Like she was afraid of what I'd ask. Dinner came, everyone gathered, and the tension was thick enough to taste. The food smelled amazing, but no one seemed eager to dig in. And the empty chair just sat there. A quiet accusation. A symbol of something no one would name. I waited until the conversation died down and then said, loud enough for the whole table, "I want to know why that chair is there." Forks froze midair. Conversation stopped immediately. My Uncle Mark muttered, "Oh boy," under his breath. My aunt looked at my mom like she was bracing for a fight. My mom's jaw clenched. "Not now." "Yes, now," I said. My heart was pounding, but I kept going. "I'm 21. I deserve to know what tradition I've been part of my entire life. This isn't normal. So someone needs to explain it." My grandma breathed in sharply. My mom opened her mouth to argue, but Uncle Mark beat her to it. He took a long drink from his whiskey glass and said, "The chair is for someone who should have been here." My mom shot him a look so fierce I thought she'd lunge across the table. "Mark," she said, voice trembling, "don't." But the damage was done. The words were out, and everyone knew I wasn't backing down. My grandma finally put her hand over my mom's and whispered, "After dinner, please." So we ate in silence. The longest, most uncomfortable meal of my life. I barely tasted anything even though my grandma had cooked all my favorites. My mind was spinning with possibilities. Death, estrangement, an ancestor they wanted to honor, some traumatic family event. But none of those explained their reactions. None explained the panic, the fear, the guilt. After everyone finished their pie and began drifting into the living room, my grandma called my mom and me over. She sat down on the couch like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. My mom sat next to her, already crying before a single word was spoken. On the coffee table was an old photo album. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't one of the ones we usually saw growing up. It looked older, the leather worn, the edges frayed. One of the pages was open, and on it was a photo of a teenage girl I had never seen before. She looked around 17. Soft brown hair, kind eyes, a half smile that looked nervous and hopeful at the same time. She looked familiar in a way I couldn't place. "Who is that?" I asked. My mom broke down completely. Not just tears, full body sobbing. I'd never seen her like that. My grandma put her arm around her, and then she looked at me with eyes that had seen too much pain. "That," she said softly, "is your sister." I felt the floor drop out from under me. My sister. I didn't even know I had one. My mind was reeling. I couldn't speak. My mom finally managed to choke out words between her sobs. "I got pregnant when I was 16, she said. "My father, he didn't let me keep her. He forced me to give her up. He said it would ruin my life. He said I had no choice." I didn't know what to say. My mom, the woman who practically micromanaged my life, had gone through something so huge, so life-altering, and she'd never said a word about it. "I didn't want to give her up," she cried. "They took her from me before I could even hold her. I never got to say goodbye." My grandma looked like she was going to crumble into dust. "I should have stopped him," she whispered. "I should have done more. I regret it every day." Everything suddenly clicked. The empty chair, the tension, the silence. The sacred way they treated that seat like it held the ghost of someone real. It wasn't a tradition. It was a wound. And the chair wasn't symbolic. It was literal. A place waiting for a person who had been taken from them. I felt anger, sadness, confusion, grief for someone I'd never met. And then I asked the question that made my mom freeze. Did you ever find her? My grandma looked down at her hands. I tried, she said. Over the years, I contacted the agency. They couldn't tell me much. But 5 years ago, I found the woman who adopted her. She told me your sister knew she was adopted, that she knew your mother's name. She said she might want to reach out someday. My mom stared at her in shock. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Because she wasn't ready, my grandma said. And I didn't want to give you hope only to have it crushed. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to hold this much emotion at once. It felt like my whole childhood suddenly made sense and fell apart at the same time. And that's when everything changed. After that confession, the room felt too small to hold everything inside it. It was like all the air had been sucked out, and the three of us were left breathing memories and regrets instead of oxygen. I didn't know what to do with my hands, with my thoughts, with the shock pulsing through my body. I just sat there staring at the picture of the girl. My sister. A girl I never knew existed until 10 minutes ago. I kept looking at her face, trying to see pieces of myself in her. Did we have the same nose? The same eyes? Would we have gotten along? What kind of person had she become? Had she ever wondered about me? Did she even know I existed? All the years I'd spent thinking I was an only child. She had been out there somewhere living a whole separate life, not knowing her family still set a place for her every Thanksgiving. It hurt. Not in a sharp, sudden way, more like a deep, slow ache that sank into my bones. The kind of hurt that rewires you. My mom wiped her eyes and took the photo out of the album, holding it like it was glass that could shatter with a breath. She looked so scared, she whispered. They took this at the home before everything happened. She asked for me, you know. The nurse told me she wanted her mother, but they wouldn't let me in. She buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with the weight of 21 years of silence. I thought about her every day, she said. On her birthdays, on Christmas, on your birthday. I wondered if she was safe, if she was happy, if she knew how much I loved her. My grandma squeezed her hand. Your father was wrong, she said softly. He took something from all of us. And the chair. I know it hurt you to see it every year, but I didn't know how else to honor her. We couldn't say her name. We couldn't talk about her. So I made space for her the only way I knew how. I sat down next to them. The photo between us, like a fragile secret, finally brought into the light. Does she know about me? I asked quietly. My grandma nodded a little. The adoption mother said she knew she had a younger brother. She didn't know your name, but she knew she wasn't alone. That hit me harder than I expected. I never imagined that somewhere out there, a stranger, a woman who'd grown into adulthood without me, had wondered about her younger brother. I tried to picture what she imagined. Did she think I looked like her? Did she ever think about reaching out? Or had she pushed the whole story into a locked box in her mind, too painful to open? My mom took a shaky breath. I would have looked for her, she said. But your grandfather told me she was better off without me. He made me feel like I didn't deserve her. Like I was bad. A surge of anger shot through me. I'd always known my grandfather was strict, emotionally distant, controlling, the kind of man who thought vulnerability was weakness, but I'd never imagined he was capable of something like this. Forcing a teenage girl to give up her baby. Erasing a child from the family like she was an inconvenience. I clenched my fists. He was wrong, I said, my voice cracking. He was so unbelievably wrong. My grandma nodded. I know, she whispered. I know. We sat there for a long time, letting the silence settle around us. Eventually, my mom pulled herself together enough to stand up and walk to the window. The yard was covered in fallen leaves, and the sunset cast long shadows across the grass. There's more, she said softly. My stomach tightened. More. She nodded without turning around. I wrote her letters. Every year. On her birthday. On Thanksgiving. On the day they took her. I wrote hundreds of letters and kept them in a box under my bed. I couldn't send them, I didn't know where to mail them. But I had to say the things I couldn't let myself forget. She finally turned, tears sliding down her face. I kept track of everything. I wrote about how I felt, what you were like as a kid, how every milestone in your life reminded me of what I lost. I thought someday, if she ever found us, I'd be able to give them to her. I swallowed hard. Can I see them? She hesitated, like she was weighing whether opening that box would break her or free her. Not yet, she said finally. The letters are raw, and some of them were written during very dark times. I will show you, I promise. But not tonight. I understood. Some wounds need to be opened slowly. My grandma stood up and shuffled to a drawer in the TV cabinet. She pulled out a small, folded piece of paper that looked like it had been handled 1,000 times. She handed it to me. I wasn't sure if I'd ever give you this, she said. But now that you know, you should have it. I unfolded the paper. It was a note from the adoption agency dated around when I must have been 3. It didn't have much detail, just that the adoptive mother had sent a brief update. The girl, my sister, was healthy, smart, loved, thriving, and her adoptive parents had decided not to pursue further correspondence. But they'd leave the door open for her when she was older. I stared at the paper so long that the words blurred. I didn't know what to do with the emotional whiplash. Relief that she had a good life. Heartbreak for the family that never got to know her. Grief for my mom, who carried this pain in silence. It's not fair, I said finally, my voice cracking. None of this is fair. No, my grandma said quietly. It isn't. My mom sat down again, looking like she'd aged 10 years in the last hour. Sometimes I wonder if she hates me, she said. If she thinks I didn't want her. If she believes the lie they told me, that she'd be better off without me. I shook my head. She deserves to know the truth. My mom looked at the floor. I don't know if I deserve to tell her. That gutted me. My mom wasn't perfect. She had her walls and her anxieties and her tendency to avoid emotions, but she didn't deserve this kind of self-punishment. You do deserve it, I said, and she deserves to hear it. My grandma nodded but didn't say anything. I could tell she agreed, but she also carried her own guilt. They were 2 generations of women crushed under the decisions of one man who was no longer alive to answer for it. After a long stretch of silence, I asked, "Do you think she'll ever come find us?" My mom let out a shaky breath. I've dreamed of that since the day she was born. My grandma looked at me, her eyes soft but heavy. I think she might, she said. Her adoptive mother hinted that she was curious, that she'd asked questions, that she wanted to understand her past. And you didn't tell Mom? I asked. My grandma's voice broke. I didn't want to give her hope. She was barely holding herself together back then. And the woman asked me not to reach out again. She said the decision had to be your sister's. I didn't know how to feel. Angry? Sad? Confused? Grateful my sister had grown up in a loving home? Angry that my mom had been denied the chance to be part of her life? All of it swirled in my chest like a storm. I kept staring at the picture. Her expression, her hair, her eyes, the slight curve of her smile. She looked like my mom. She looked like my grandma. She looked like us. Eventually, the rest of the family started drifting back into the kitchen, unaware of what had just been unearthed. My aunt complained that the coffee was too weak. My cousins asked if they could open early Christmas presents. My Uncle Mark poured himself another drink and leaned against the wall, watching us with the unease of someone who knows a bomb just went off but isn't sure what the fallout will be. My mom quietly went upstairs to wash her face. My grandma started putting the photo album away, careful and delicate, like she was packing away a piece of her heart. I stayed on the couch, holding the picture. I couldn't put it down. I didn't want to. Felt like if I let it go, she'd disappear again. My Uncle Mark wandered over and stood beside me. She would have liked you, he said after a minute. I looked up at him. What makes you say that? He shrugged. You're a good kid. Kind. Too curious for your own good. But that's not a bad thing. He nodded toward the chair still set at the table. Some ghosts don't go away, even when the person is still alive. I hadn't thought about it that way, but he was right. For 21 years, my sister had been a presence in our house without ever stepping foot inside it. My uncle sighed. Your grandfather, he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought he was protecting your mom. But he never understood that sometimes protecting someone means hurting them worse. I didn't trust myself to speak. He patted my shoulder awkwardly and walked away. I sat there for a long time, replaying the conversation over and over. The empty chair at the table looked different now. Not mysterious, not creepy, just sad. A reminder of everything we lost. Everything my mom lost. Eventually, the house emptied out. People went home. The cousins fell asleep in the car. My aunt kissed my grandma goodbye. Uncle Mark stumbled out the door, and my grandma locked it behind him with a sigh. By then, it was late. The sky outside was dark, the street quiet. I helped my grandma put away the dishes. My mom came back downstairs looking exhausted but calmer. We didn't talk. There weren't words big enough for what we'd uncovered. And then, just as I was about to go upstairs to bed, there was a knock on the door. A soft, hesitant, uncertain knock. The three of us froze. My grandma put a hand over her heart. My mom stared at the door like it was something alive. My own breath caught in my throat, because somehow in that moment we all knew everything was about to change. The knock was so soft at first that I honestly thought I imagined it. It wasn't the kind of knock you give when you're visiting family, or dropping something off, or even when you're trying to sell something. It was tentative, fragile, like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they should be there. But something pulled them anyway. No one spoke. No one even breathed at first. It felt like the whole house went completely still, waiting to see what destiny had just landed on our front porch. My mom's hands started shaking. She gripped the back of the dining chair closest to her like she needed something to anchor herself to this reality. My grandma whispered my mother's name, but it came out as a trembling sound more than a word. I don't know why. Maybe because I was the least emotionally shattered in the room, but I stepped toward the door. Every step felt loud, even though I was walking on carpet. I could feel my pulse in my ears. The house smelled like turkey and cinnamon and stress. The lights were too bright, like they were exposing everything all at once. I reached the door and hesitated. A weird fear rose in my chest. Not fear of a stranger or danger, but fear that the next few seconds would change every moment that came after. I didn't know what I expected. I didn't know what I hoped for, but part of me knew exactly what was going to happen the moment I turned the knob. I opened the door, and there she was, a woman in her mid-30s, maybe 36 or 37. Brown hair pulled back into a messy bun, strands falling around her face like she'd been driving with the windows down. Her eyes, God, her eyes, they were familiar in a way that hit me like a punch to the chest. Wide, uncertain, but so full of emotion it felt like she was looking straight into a part of me I hadn't known existed. She was shaking. Her hands, her lips, even her breath. She looked like she'd rehearsed 1,000 things to say and then forgot every single word in the last 5 seconds. "Hi," she said finally. Just one word, quiet and trembling. I couldn't speak, couldn't move aside. I was frozen, staring at the sister I never knew I had until a few hours ago. She swallowed hard and said, I'm sorry for coming so late. I didn't know if I'd lose my nerve if I waited until morning." My mom walked up behind me, slowly, like she was approaching something sacred. When she reached the doorway, she made a sound I had never heard from her before. A sound that ripped out of her, raw and disbelieving. The woman looked at her, really looked, and my mom looked right back. Her eyes full of 21 years of longing and grief and love so powerful it practically filled the doorway with heat. My sister, because there was no denying that now, took a shaky breath and said in a voice that cracked, I think I might be your daughter." My mom's legs buckled. She grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. Tears poured down her face instantly, like they'd been waiting for this exact moment to break free. She whispered, "Oh my God, like a prayer and a breath and a confession all at once, before anything else could happen. My mom stepped forward and pulled her into the kind of hug you give someone you've missed every second of your life without knowing what they looked like. My sister stiffened for a split second, like she wasn't used to being held, then melted into her, sobbing. My grandma was behind us, her hand covering her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. She looked like she was witnessing a miracle she never believed she'd get to see. I stood there in the doorway, heart pounding, watching something I thought only happened in movies. Something raw and messy and too big for words. After a few minutes, they pulled apart, both of them shaking, both wiping their tears and failing miserably. My mom stepped back just enough to see her face clearly. "You're beautiful," she whispered, voice breaking again. My sister let out this soft, painful laugh, like she didn't know what to do with the compliment. I wasn't sure if this was the right house," she said. "I almost drove away twice." "You're home," my mom said, and that was it. My sister crumbled into tears again. We should come inside," my grandma said, her voice choked. "Please, sweetheart, come in." My sister stepped inside, her eyes scanning the house like she was cataloging everything. The photos on the wall, the rug, the furniture, and then her gaze landed on the dining table. On the empty chair, she stopped walking, her breath hitched. "That place setting," she whispered. My mom turned to look at it too, and her face crumpled. "It's been yours," she said softly. "Every year, since you were born." My sister covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hold back a sob that broke right through anyway. My grandma walked over to her slowly and reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, something mothers do automatically. "We never forgot you," she whispered. "Not for one day." My sister cried harder at that. We moved into the living room, where the three women sat on the couch. I sat on the armchair across from them, feeling like I was watching something sacred unfold. It felt almost wrong to be there, but also like I needed to witness every second. My sister took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I'm sorry for just showing up," she said. "I didn't want to overwhelm anyone. I didn't even know if you'd want to see me." My mom grabbed her hands. "Of course we want to see you," she said fiercely. "We've wanted this for 21 years. My sister nodded, wiping her cheeks. "I didn't know if you even remembered me," she said, her voice small and unsure. My mom's face twisted like the sentence physically hurt her. "Remember you?" she echoed. "I never healed from losing you. I never stopped thinking about you. You were never gone." My sister looked down at her hands. "I was scared," she admitted. "I didn't want to hurt my adoptive parents. They've been good to me. They're amazing. But I always felt like something was missing. Like there was this shadow in my life that didn't belong to me." My grandma nodded softly. "We understand." My sister took a shaky breath. 2 weeks ago I don't even know if you'd call it a message. It was anonymous. No name, no picture. Just an address. This address. And a date." She hesitated. "And for words, 'You deserve a seat.'" My mom and I both looked at my grandma at the same time. She looked guilty. Not ashamed, just caught. My sister noticed. "Was it you?" she asked. My grandma nodded slowly. "I only wanted to give you the choice," she said. "I didn't want to force anything. I didn't want to hurt your life. I wanted you to know you were wanted here, that the door was open." My sister nodded, tears welling in her eyes again. "It meant more than you know," she said. "I didn't decide right away. I kept the note on my nightstand. I'd look at it every night, thinking, should I? Will they hate me? Will they think I'm too late? But something kept pulling me toward it. "You're not too late," my mom whispered urgently. "You're here. That's all that matters." My sister let out a soft sob and leaned into my mom's shoulder. I didn't know whether to look away or not. I didn't want to intrude, but I also couldn't stop staring. I couldn't believe this was happening. I couldn't believe she was real, sitting right across from me. My mom eventually wiped her eyes and said, "We should introduce you properly. This is your brother." She gestured toward me. My sister looked at me for the first time fully, really looked. Her eyes widened slightly, and she let out a surprised laugh. Wow, you look like me. I felt this strange heat spread through my chest. I'd never experienced anything like it, this sudden connection, like a rope being tied between two people who had drifted on separate currents their entire lives. I've thought the same thing, I said with a small smile. I mean, for the last few hours since I found out you existed. She laughed again, this time louder, and it was the first moment that felt light instead of heavy. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to drop a whole lifetime on you in one night. It's not your fault, I said. We should have had you all along. She swallowed hard at that. My mom asked if she wanted something to drink. Tea, water, coffee. But my sister shook her head. I don't know if I could swallow anything right now, she admitted. We talked for a long time. Hours, maybe. Time got weird. My sister told us about her childhood. Her adoptive parents, her hobbies, how she loved painting but never felt confident enough to show her work to anyone. She told us she'd always wondered about her birth parents but wasn't sure if reaching out would cause problems. My mom told her about her own childhood, about the pain she hid, about how she tried to make up for the loss by being a good mother to me, even though she always felt like a piece of her heart was missing. My grandma told her stories from when my mom was young, things even I had never heard. My sister listened like she was soaking up lost years. Every now and then, my sister's eyes would drift to the dining table, to the chair. Finally, she asked, "You really kept that seat for me?" "Every year." My mom nodded. "It was the only way we knew how to keep you with us." My sister covered her mouth with her hand. She didn't cry this time. She just looked overwhelmed in a different way, as if something that had been twisted inside her was finally beginning to untangle. What happens now?" she asked quietly. My mom squeezed her hand. "Whatever you want," she said. "There's no pressure. You decide the pace. You decide everything. We're just grateful you came." My sister nodded slowly, like she was absorbing every word. "I want to know you," she said. "All of you. I want to understand where I came from." My grandma smiled gently. "We'd like that." I don't know how long we talked after that. Maybe an hour. Maybe 3. But eventually my sister stood up. "I should go," she said softly. "It's late." My mom looked like she wanted to grab her and never let her leave again. But she nodded. "Can we see you again?" "Yes," my sister said immediately. "I want to come back. I need to process tonight." "We understand," my grandma said. My sister hugged my mom again. Tightly. She hugged my grandma too. And then she turned to me. I thought maybe she'd just wave or say goodbye. Instead, she hugged me too. "I'm glad to have a brother," she whispered. My throat tightened. "I'm glad too." And then she left. We watched her walk to her car, watched her sit there for a few seconds with her head resting on the steering wheel, like she was letting herself feel everything at once. And then she drove away. When the taillights disappeared, my mom crumpled into my grandma's arms, sobbing in a way I'd never heard from her before. Relief, pain, joy, grief, all mashed together. I didn't cry then, but I did later, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Because the empty chair? It wasn't empty anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I don't think anyone in the house did. My mom stayed up pacing the hallway, stopping every few minutes as if she needed to remind herself to breathe. My grandma made a pot of chamomile tea she didn't touch. I lay there staring at the ceiling, hearing my heartbeat in my ears, replaying everything that had happened in the living room over and over again. Part of me felt like I was living in someone else's story. Another part felt like my entire life had been building toward that one night, like all the weird tension, the unspoken grief, the empty chair, the strange looks exchanged between the adults. Like all of it finally made sense, and the story that never had a beginning now suddenly had a middle. I kept thinking about her, my sister, how she looked standing in the doorway, how her voice cracked when she spoke, how she cried against my mom, how she said she wanted to know us. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment when she hugged me. It wasn't like hugging a stranger. It wasn't familiar either. It was something in between, A connection that didn't have years behind it but had blood and longing and something invisible weaving through it. Around 4 in the morning, I heard footsteps outside my door. My mom knocked lightly. "You awake?" she whispered. "Yeah." She opened the door and stepped inside. She looked exhausted. Puffy eyes, blotchy cheeks, hair pulled back in a messy bun. But she also looked lighter. Scared, but lighter. Like she'd been carrying a boulder her entire life and someone finally helped her set it down. "I couldn't sleep," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "I just needed to talk." I pushed myself up against the headboard. "Yeah," I said softly. "Me too." She rubbed her hands together, something she always does when she's anxious. "I still can't believe she came," she whispered. "All these years, I prayed for that. Even after I stopped believing in anything, I prayed." "She seems like a good person," I said. "Kind. Nervous. But kind." My mom's eyes filled with tears again. "She looked just like I imagined," she said. "But so grown. So strong." She swallowed. "Did you see how she held herself? Like she wasn't sure she deserved to be there. Like she didn't want to bother us. That broke me, because she was never a bother. Not for a single second." "I know," I said gently. She wiped her cheek. "I don't know what she wants from me," she admitted. "I don't know if she wants a relationship, or just answers or closure. And I don't want to overwhelm her." "You won't," I said. "She came here. She hugged you. She wants something." My mom's voice cracked. "I'm scared," she whispered. "What if I'm not enough for her? What if she leaves again?" "She didn't leave you," I said firmly. "She never chose that." My mom nodded slowly, but her eyes stayed troubled. "Your grandfather?" she started, then stopped, as if she was afraid to keep going. "It's okay," I said. "You can talk about him." She shook her head. "He ruined everything. He thought he knew best. He cared more about how things looked than how they were. And I let him control me because I was a scared kid." "You were 16, I said. "You didn't have power. I should have fought harder." "You did," I insisted. "You wrote letters. You never forgot. You fought every day against the silence he forced on you." She looked at me, surprised. Not because she didn't believe me, but because she'd never heard it that way before. "Do you really think so?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "I think you survived something impossible. And you survived it without letting it turn you cruel." My mom burst into tears again and leaned forward, resting her forehead against my shoulder. I hugged her, holding her because I didn't know what else to do. I felt her shaking, and I realized she hadn't had anyone to talk to about this for 2 decades. She'd carried all of this alone. We stayed like that for a while. Eventually she pulled back and wiped her face. "Do you want to hear something weird?" she asked, voice soft. "Always." She gave a half-sad, half-thoughtful smile. "Every Thanksgiving, when I saw that chair set for her, it hurt. But it also kept me going. It reminded me she was real, that she wasn't gone forever." I nodded. "I get that." She exhaled shakily. "I don't want to lose her again." "You won't," I said. Then I paused. "And even if she needs time, she'll come back." She didn't drive here because she was curious. She drove here because she wanted something. My mom nodded again, looking calmer. "You should get some rest," she said eventually. "You've had a long day too." "Yeah," I said. "You should sleep too." She gave a soft laugh. "Maybe." She stood up and hesitated in the doorway. "Thank you," she said, "for pushing, for asking. I don't know if I could have faced today without you." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. She left the door slightly open. I lay back, closed my eyes, and listened to the house settle. The creak of the hallway floor, the hum of the heater, my grandma coughing softly downstairs. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full of possibility, of change, of something new beginning. The next morning was heavy with that strange post-crisis fog, the kind where your body moves but your mind feels stuck in the night before. My mom looked like she hadn't slept at all, but she wasn't buzzing nervously the way she had the day before. She was quieter, more grounded, even if her eyes were red. My grandma was in the kitchen making pancakes, which was her way of dealing with stress. She always cooked when something big was happening. Births, deaths, fights, reconciliations. Cooking was the only language she trusted when emotions got too overwhelming. She looked up when I entered. "Morning, sweetheart," she said softly. "Morning." I sat at the table. We were quiet for a while. The sound of the spatula scraping against the pan filled the silence. Finally, I asked, "How are you feeling?" She sighed. "Old," she said. "Relieved, terrified, grateful. Like someone took a knife out of my heart but left the wound open." "That's a lot," I said. She let out a small laugh. "Life is a lot." She set a plate in front of me. I wasn't hungry, but I ate anyway because she needed me to. My mom came in a few minutes later, holding her phone like it was a bomb she didn't know how to defuse. "What's wrong?" I asked. She held up the screen. A text message. From an unknown number. My heart stopped. Mom read it out loud, her voice trembling. "Hi, it's me. I just wanted to say thank you for last night. I didn't sleep, but not because it was bad. I just had a lot to think about. Would it be okay if we met again? Maybe somewhere quiet. Just us." My grandma gasped softly. My mom covered her mouth with her hand. "Text her back," I urged gently. My mom nodded, tears forming again. She typed slowly, so carefully it looked like each word carried the weight of a lifetime. "I would love that. Whenever you're ready." She sent it. The phone buzzed again almost immediately. "How about today?" my sister replied. My mom's breath caught. She looked at me like she was asking permission, even though it wasn't mine to give. "You should go," I said. "Just you and her." My mom nodded and wiped her eyes. "I want to." "She wants to," I added. "That's amazing." My grandma reached out and squeezed my mom's hand. "Bring her back here after," she said gently. "If she wants." My mom smiled through tears. "I hope she does." They met at a little cafe downtown around noon. I didn't go. I figured they needed their own space, their own conversation, their own beginning. I spent the afternoon cleaning up the house even though everything was already clean. It helped keep my mind busy. Around 2:30, the front door opened quietly. I looked up from the couch. My mom walked in first. My sister walked in behind her. Seeing her in daylight was different. Less dramatic, more real. She looked tired, but in the way people look after crying and feeling and talking more than they ever expected to. My mom smiled, the softest smile I'd seen on her since I was a kid. "We thought we'd stop by," she said. My sister gave a small wave. "Hi," she said. "Hope it's okay." "Yeah," I said, standing up too quickly. "Yeah, of course." She smiled. "Good." My grandma came out of the kitchen like she'd been waiting by the doorway the entire time, which she probably had. When she saw my sister, her eyes filled with tears again. "You came back," she whispered. My sister nodded shyly. "I wanted to." My grandma hugged her again, softer this time, like she was hugging a memory she didn't want to crush. We all sat in the living room. My sister looked around the house with a different expression now. Less overwhelmed, more curious. "Your house is warm," she said. "Mine was always quiet. Nice, but quiet." My grandma gave a small laugh. "We're loud," she said. "We've always been loud." "I think I like loud," my sister said quietly. My mom's breath hitched again. They talked for a while about everything and nothing. My sister asked about family traditions. My mom told her embarrassingly sweet stories about me as a toddler. My grandma brought out old photo albums, and my sister went through them page by page, her eyes wide every time she saw a baby picture of my mom. I watched her reactions more than the photos. Every time she saw something familiar, her face softened. Every time she saw a face she didn't recognize, she'd lean in closer, soaking it up like she was rebuilding the puzzle of who she was. At one point she looked at me and asked, "What were you like growing up?" I didn't expect the question. I shrugged. Loud, hyper, annoying. I climbed things I shouldn't. I broke my arm when I was 7 because I thought I could fly off the porch. She laughed. A real laugh this time. Sounds like something I would have done. My mom snorted. It's exactly something you would have done. I swear you two have the same spirit. My sister smiled at that. I like that. The warmth in the room shifted. Something settled. Something healed a little. I knew we weren't suddenly a perfect family. I knew there were still wounds and fears and years of missing pieces that would take time to fill. But the beginning was here. And beginnings, when they've been delayed for decades, feel like miracles. After a few hours, my sister said she needed to get going. She promised to come back soon. My mom hugged her at the door. My grandma kissed her forehead. And when she hugged me again, she held on a second longer than before. I'm really glad you're my brother, she said softly. Me too, I said. She left. And as the door closed behind her, I realized the house felt different now. Lighter, fuller, more complete. The empty chair wasn't empty anymore, not literally, but in spirit. And for the first time in my life, Thanksgiving didn't feel like a ritual for someone who was missing. Felt like the beginning of bringing her home. Over the next few days, life didn't return to normal. Couldn't. Something fundamental had shifted in the foundation of our family. It was like we'd been living in a house with a locked attic for years, pretending the door wasn't there, and suddenly someone had handed us the key. Except opening that attic didn't just give us answers. It changed the architecture of the whole house. The air felt different. Conversations stretched into deeper places without the invisible walls we used to run into. Even silence felt meaningful instead of awkward. I caught my mom staring at her phone constantly. Hopeful, nervous, terrified she'd miss a text or that she wouldn't get one at all. My grandma seemed lighter, too. She hummed more. She cooked more. She talked more openly about the past in bits and pieces, always stopping when her voice wavered. But the fact that she could talk at all was something new. And me? I didn't know how to feel half the time. Some days I felt excited. Other days overwhelmed. Some moments I was hit with guilt for never noticing something was wrong growing up. Other times, I felt weirdly protective of my sister even though I barely knew her. She'd lived her whole life without a brother. And yet after just one night, I couldn't stop thinking. How could I possibly make up for 21 years? Then again, wasn't that the whole point? You don't make up for the past, you build from the present. 2 days after her first visit, my sister texted me for the first time. It was simple. Hey, this is, well, you know who this is, LOL. Thank you for being kind. Just reading it made my chest tighten. I replied, always. Wanna grab coffee sometime? No pressure. She answered 2 minutes later. Yeah, I'd like that. We met at a little cafe downtown, the one with mismatched furniture and too many plants hanging from the ceiling. I got there 10 minutes early because I didn't want to be late. She showed up 5 minutes after that, wearing jeans and a paint-stained hoodie that immediately made me smile. My mom used to have one just like it. She walked in awkwardly, hands shoved in her sleeves, scanning the room until she spotted me. When our eyes met, she relaxed a little and gave a half wave. Hey, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Hey. She looked nervous, so I decided to break the ice. I like your hoodie. She glanced down at it and laughed. Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't even think about what I was wearing. It's cool. Makes you look like an artist. I mean, I kind of am one, she said shyly. Sort of. What do you paint? She shrugged. A lot of things. I don't really show people. It's just something I do when my brain's too loud. I nodded. I get that. I write sometimes. It was her turn to smile. Guess it runs in the family. The conversation started slow, but not in a bad way. More like two people taking careful steps on a bridge that hadn't existed a week ago. She told me about her job. She worked at a community center, helping run art classes for kids. She told me about her adoptive parents, who she described warmly and respectfully, but with a small, lingering distance that I recognized instantly. The distance of someone who loves deeply but still feels a space inside them they can't explain. So, she said eventually, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. Can I ask you something personal? Yeah, I said immediately. Ask anything. What was she like growing up? I knew exactly who she meant. I leaned back a little, collecting memories. She was strong, I said, but soft, and funny, and anxious, and creative, and really, really protective. She always worried about everything, but she never showed it. Not when it came to me. I don't think she slept properly for the first 10 years of my life because she thought I'd roll off the bed and break something. My sister smiled softly. That sounds like the version of her I met. She always puts other people first, I continued, even when it hurts her, especially then. My sister looked down at her cup. I wondered about her, she said quietly. Every birthday, every Christmas Eve, every time I blew out candles. I wondered where she was, what she looked like, whether she thought about me. She did, I said immediately. Every day. She swallowed hard. I'm glad, she whispered almost to herself. We talked for almost 2 hours. We laughed. We fell quiet. We learned small things about each other. Our favorite foods, our weird habits, the way we both tap our fingers when we're anxious. But beneath all of that, there was something deeper. A sense that we were trying to bridge two worlds that had almost never touched. When the conversation finally lulled, she said, "Can I tell you something? Something I didn't tell Mom yet." Of course. She took a deep breath and looked out the window. I came here because I felt lost. And because I found my adoption papers when I was packing for a move. They had your mom's name on them. I Googled her. I found your grandma's obituary. I found you. I blinked. Me? She nodded. You have an uncommon last name. And your mom posted pictures of you when you graduated high school. I recognized her. I wasn't sure, but something in me just knew. Wow, I said quietly. So you knew about me before you came? She nodded again. I didn't know what to do with it, though. I wasn't sure if reaching out would blow up everyone's life. I was scared. And then I got the note. She looked at me. There was a vulnerability in her expression that made my chest ache. If I hadn't gotten it, I don't know if I would have come. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said the only thing that came to mind. I'm glad you did. She smiled again. Small, genuine, soft. I am too, she whispered. After that coffee meeting, things changed again. But this time, the change was gentle. Easier. Less like an explosion and more like morning light slowly filling a room that had been dark for too long. My sister started coming over once or twice a week. Sometimes she'd stay for dinner. Sometimes she and my mom would sit on the porch for hours talking about things that made both of them cry softly, but in the way that heals more than it hurts. Other nights she'd come over just to hang out with me. We'd watch movies or go for walks or sit in comfortable silence scrolling on our phones. Sometimes she'd bring her sketchbook and draw while I worked on my laptop. The house felt different when she was there, more complete. And every time she came through the door, her eyes drifted automatically to the empty chair. Not with sadness anymore, but with something like awe. A reminder that even absence can hold love. One night, about 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, she asked if she could sit in it. My mom froze in the doorway, her hand over her heart. My grandma covered her mouth again, a habit she'd developed since my sister appeared. Are you sure? My mom whispered, her voice trembling. My sister nodded softly. I think I'd like to. She walked to the end of the table, pulled out the chair carefully, and sat down. The fancy plate was there. The silverware. The folded napkin. The glass of water. Everything the same as it had been every year. But now, for the first time in 21 years, the chair wasn't empty. My mom let out a sound between a sob and a breath. My grandma wiped tears off her cheeks with her apron. My sister looked up at them and smiled. Shy, emotional, but sure. It's comfortable, she said quietly. And then she laughed softly through her tears. Good. It's nice to finally know what it feels like. We didn't make a big deal out of it. No speeches. No dramatic words. Just quiet acceptance, quiet joy, quiet healing. Sometimes the loudest emotions are the ones shared in silence. But healing isn't linear. It never is. As weeks passed, my sister began opening up more. Some of it was beautiful. Some of it broke us. One night, She told us about how she always felt like she didn't fit perfectly in her adoptive family. Not because they didn't love her, but because there was a part of her they couldn't reach. How she felt guilty wondering about us. How she sometimes cried at night because she didn't understand why she had so many questions she was afraid to ask. My mom cried with her that night. My grandma held both their hands. I sat there wanting to fix everything but knowing the only thing I could offer was presence. And maybe that was enough. Another night, she confessed that she worried we'd get tired of her, that she'd overwhelm us. My mom's response was immediate and fierce. "I spent 21 years aching for you," she said. "You could never overwhelm me." Another night, she told me that she always imagined having a younger brother, not knowing I existed. And that when she found pictures of me online, she spent almost 2 hours scrolling through them, wondering if she was allowed to feel pride or affection for someone she'd never met. I don't think I've ever felt anything as heavy and beautiful as hearing that. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes she'd cancel plans at the last minute because she said she felt off. Some days she disappeared into her own thoughts and didn't respond to texts until late at night with a simple "sorry. Brain was loud today." Some days she seemed afraid, like the ground beneath her might vanish. But she always came back. Slowly, steadily, she came back. Her presence became part of our rhythm. Her laughter became something the house learned to expect. Her shoes by the door became normal. Her sketchbook on the coffee table didn't feel out of place. The house that once held an invisible absence now held a person. A sister. One night, maybe a month after that first visit, she asked if we could look at the letters. My mom froze when she asked. Her eyes went wide. She didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "Are you sure?" My sister nodded. "I think I'm ready." My mom led her upstairs. I stayed in the living room, but I could hear the soft murmur of their voices through the floorboards. I heard a drawer open. I heard paper rustle. I heard muffled sobs. My mom's, then my sister's, then both. It took almost an hour before they came back down. My sister's eyes were red, but she looked peaceful. My mom looked lighter than I'd ever seen her in my life. "She wrote about you," my sister said to me quietly. "I know," I said. "No," she corrected gently. "She wrote about the brother she prayed you would be." I didn't know what to do with that. Was I anything like she imagined? She smiled warmly. Better. Life didn't magically fix itself after that. There were still hard conversations, still painful confessions, still healing that felt like picking old scabs, still tears, happy ones and sad ones. But the emptiness that used to hover around the house, the heaviness that clung to holidays, it slowly dissolved. And every time my sister walked through the front door, the house seemed to exhale, like it was welcoming home someone it had been waiting for, someone it had always had space for, someone it had set a seat for long before she ever sat in it. Winter settled in slowly that year, the kind that makes the air sharp and the nights stretch on forever. My sister kept visiting, sometimes once a week, sometimes twice. Each time she came, the fear in her eyes softened a little more, replaced by curiosity, comfort, even something like belonging. My mom, for her part, tried desperately not to smother her. But I could see the instinct in every gesture, every nervous smile, every tiny pause before she reached out to touch her hand or brush her hair from her face. It was the instinct of a mother who lost her child and was terrified of overwhelming the miracle of finally being allowed to have her back. My sister handled it with grace, even when it was obvious my mom was fighting herself. Sometimes she'd place her hand over my mom's and say, "It's okay, I'm here." Other times she'd lean into my mom's shoulder like she'd been doing it her whole life. It broke me a little every time, in a good way. Still, healing isn't a straight line. About a month and a half after Thanksgiving, my sister stopped visiting for 2 weeks. No explanation, no calls, no texts beyond short, carefully worded responses like, "Busy," "Sorry," or "Just overwhelmed." My mom pretended she was fine, said things like, "She just needs space," or "She's probably busy with work." But she checked her phone every 10 minutes with the same worried crease between her eyebrows. She cleaned the house twice as often. She cooked too much food. She wandered from room to room like she was searching for something she couldn't name. My grandma said nothing, but I saw the way she stood by the window right after sunset, the time my sister usually came by. I saw how she fiddled with the hem of her sleeve when my mom wasn't looking. I felt the tension too. It was like the house was waiting again. Like the empty chair had resurfaced symbolically, even though my sister hadn't said she was disappearing. Finally, I texted her, "Hey, haven't seen you in a while. Everything okay?" She didn't respond for an hour. Then, "Not really. Can we talk?" I told her to meet me at the cafe. She showed up looking fragile, not physically but emotionally. Her shoulders were hunched, her eyes guarded, like she'd wrapped herself in invisible armor. "Sorry," she said, sliding into the booth, her voice small. "You don't have to apologize," I said. "Just tell me what's going on." She looked down at the table. Her fingers picked at the sleeve of her coat. "I freaked myself out," she said quietly. "About what?" "About all of this." She gestured vaguely. "The family, the chair, the letters, the sudden, everything." "That's fair," I said gently. "It's a lot." She nodded. "I'm scared," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm scared that I'm going to disappoint you, or hurt your mom, or that I don't fit, or that I fit too much. I don't know how to be someone's daughter and someone else's daughter at the same time." My chest ached at her honesty. "You don't have to choose," I said softly. "That's what everyone keeps saying," she whispered. "But it doesn't feel that simple. My adoptive mom cried the other night. Not because she's mad I found you. She said she understands. But she's scared she's losing me. And I'm scared of that too." She rubbed her eyes with the heel of her hand. "I love them. They raised me. They're my family. But so are you. So is your mom. And I feel pulled in two directions, and I'm afraid I'll break if I stretch too far." I wanted to reach across the table and hold her hands, but I didn't want to overwhelm her. So instead I spoke quietly. "You're allowed to belong to more than one place," I said. "Families aren't like chairs. They don't require only one seat." She let out a shaky laugh. "Nice metaphor." "I try," I said. The laugh faded quickly though. "Your mom loves me so much," she whispered. "I can feel it every time she looks at me. But it scares me, because what if I can't be what she wants? What if I don't know how to be that for her?" "You don't owe her perfection," I said. "You don't owe her anything except honesty." She swallowed hard. "She waited 21 years for me. I don't want to ruin what she imagined." "She didn't imagine perfection," I said. "She imagined you, whoever you are." My sister looked away, her eyes shining. "Do you know what the worst part is?" she said softly. "A part of me feels guilty for being loved by two mothers. Like I don't deserve either one." That sentence broke something in me. "You deserve all of it," I said. My voice came out rougher than I expected. "And no one expects you to split yourself in half to make everyone happy. You're one person. You're allowed to have complicated feelings. You're allowed to take your time." She nodded, tears threatening, but held back by sheer will. "And your mom," I added. "She doesn't want anything from you except what you can give. She wants to know you. She wants to love you. She doesn't want a fantasy. She wants you." My sister covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. I didn't move. I let her cry quietly into her palms, the cafe's soft music filling the silence. It wasn't the dramatic sobbing from the first night. We'd passed that stage. This was different. These were tears of identity, of fear, of wanting to belong without betraying the people who raised her. After a while, she lowered her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Stop apologizing," I said. "You're allowed to feel." She took a deep, shaky breath. "I want to keep seeing you all. I do. I need to go slow. I need you to know that I'm not running away." "I know," I said. "And Mom will understand." She gave a sad little half-smile. "I hope so." "She will," I said with more certainty than I felt. When I got home, my mom was sitting on the couch staring at her phone. She sat up straight the moment she saw me. "Did you talk to her?" she asked immediately. "Yeah," I said, sitting down next to her. She's okay. She's just overwhelmed. My mom's face fell with guilt. I knew I pushed too hard. I knew. You didn't push, I interrupted gently. She's scared, and she's trying to figure out how to be part of two families at once. That's a lot. My mom looked down. Did she say if she still wants to see us? Yes, I said. She just wants to take it slow. My mom nodded, wiping her eyes before the tears could spill. Of course, whatever she needs. I don't want to make her feel trapped or pressured. You're not, I said softly. But she needs you to be patient. I can do that, my mom whispered. I'd wait another 21 years if I had to. I swallowed hard. You won't have to. A few days later, my sister texted again. Can I come over tonight? Just want something familiar. My mom nearly dropped her phone when she saw the message. That evening, my sister showed up wearing pajama pants and a sweater 3 sizes too big. She looked exhausted, but she also looked relieved. My mom hugged her gently this time, not with the overwhelming force of someone who feared losing her again. My sister leaned into the hug and whispered, "Thanks for waiting." My mom whispered back, "Forever." And that was when I realized something important. They weren't trying to force a relationship. They were learning each other, learning how to exist together without breaking the past that shaped them. They were building something from scratch, not trying to replace what was lost, but growing something new in the space that had always been waiting.